Evil Dead Rise was written and directed by Lee Cronin. It stars Lily Sullivan, Alyssa Sutherland, Gabrielle Eccles, Morgan Davies, and Nell Fisher. And the voice of Bruce Campbell, strangely enough, on one of the recordings. But this is quite strange, because I've never talked about the Sam Raimi Evil Deads, I've never talked about 2013, and yet I'm talking about this, and I normally like to do things in order. But I saw a comment the other day, I can't remember exactly where, but it was saying how on the recording he mentioned 3 books, 3 different sort of versions of sorts. And whilst, yes, Evil Dead 2 is technically a remake of 1, we can arguably say that that's part of the same book then, because it's doing the same story and the same basic idea. It's just more budget, more gross-out moments, more fun. So that sort of trilogy, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness, that's one iteration. And Ash vs. Evil Dead, the series, would probably come under that as well. Then you've got 2013, which, yes, okay, again, has a Bruce Campbell cameo, but like the core elements of the book and all that kind of stuff, it's different variations, you could argue. This is a multiversal tale. But that would be book 2. And because this doesn't follow on from that, it's its own new thing, that's book 3. Whether that's intentional or not, I think it's a good way of handling it if you're conflicted as to why they don't really call back. I mean, a lot of the character names in this are from actors. You even have a character called Bruce, played by Noah Paul. Clearly, who's that meant to be? So there are a lot of these callbacks, and this is very much a respectful homage in a lot of ways, but also it's its own thing. I wasn't sure how much I would like this, to be honest, but the cold open got me. I was like, I like what we're going for. I like the feeling here. And then when we're given like the backstory of what's gone on, because I was waiting the whole film through for the person we saw at the start, and it's just really a little thing at the end that just loops it back. She's not actually a core part of most of the story. But that cold open, I absolutely loved, with the rising out of the lake, etc. Beautiful. And that's when it started to win me over. Up to that point, I was like, okay. I mean, it did have a cabin in the woods, I guess, like by the lake, but it was a lot more Midsummer to me, that very pointed Scandinavian tall thing. But I was fine with that. It's fine. Changes exist. And it is clearly saying, we're taking the concept, but we're making our own thing. And I'm fine with that. Like, Raimi and Tepper are in producer roles, as I believe Bruce Campbell is as well. So the various different levels of producing from people originally involved way back. To me, that's their blessing. Or maybe it's part of the contract, I don't know. But of course, this is also its return to New Line as well. But I don't like gross out stuff. I'm not really the biggest fan of torture porn. I like some elements of Saw that kept me watching them all. I still haven't seen the most recent one though, The Spiral and all that, but hey ho. I'll get round to it at some point. But I don't tend to like that. Yet here, those moments were more gut punchy. Well, in some cases, when they're throwing up. But there was a lot more of that visceral, again, for want of a better word, impact to me. Because they'd done so well in about the first half an hour, the first third-ish, of setting up these characters, who they are, what their life's like, what their issues are, before we introduce the book and all of the awful stuff. And I totally respected it for that. I liked the realness, if you will, reality of how we get introduced to some of these characters. I can't think of another film where someone is mid-dyeing their hair when we first get introduced to them, and having to go around and deal with their family and stuff whilst the hair's developing. I've done it. I've sat there with my hair dye on, and I'm like, right, I'll send those emails that I need to do now while I'm waiting for it. You do, and it's really weird that I'm picking up on something like that, but it sells the realism. There's a phrase that I love, the mundane realism, which is people do dye their hair with families and have to sort out siblings attacking each other or fixing tattoo equipment or whatever it may be. People have lives and do things. They're not just these characters that when the camera goes away, they're not real, and then we just go back to them and all of a sudden they're acting again. I mean, they are, but a good film doesn't make you feel that. A good film, or any good production, makes you believe that these are people. And I think this is why this is my least favourite Evil Dead from an emotional standpoint. I felt really bad when, obviously the mother first of all is taken, yes, but when it starts to get through the different members of the family before the amalgam at the end, as I call it. They call it the marauder. I don't like that word. Amalgam, I prefer. Is that from Undertale? Possibly. But it's the same as in Colour Out of Space, which I will rewatch and do a video of at some point. I'm sure I have to. But it's that same thing of that, like, you know what the component elements are, and you know that they've suffered to get to this point. But because we spent that time with them, it hits a lot harder than in stuff like Saw, where a lot of the time we're shown someone in a trap right at the start and we have no idea who they are. It's literally the spectacle. This has those spectacular moments in the proper definition, but it also hits you on an emotional level. And it's only 90-odd minutes. It does all this in a very condensed time. So next time someone's like, this movie needed to be 3 hours to tell the story. Sometimes that is the case, yes. But if you can tell your story in 96 minutes, I think it was, best recollection this is, then tell your story in 96 minutes. I'm totally fine with that. And this was a story that could be told in that time. It leaves the door open for something next, I would say. I'm quite willing to see what happens. With the previous entries, it was at the cabin and maybe could have got out in the world, and I know Ash vs Evil Dead touches on that a bit more, but taking purely the films, it's always been contained. Now the films are doing what that series did, where it's spreading out of one location. I mean, just having it in a normal setting for most people. A lot of people don't just randomly go to a cabin in the woods every summer or something like that. People live in their broken down apartment buildings and such. And again, that mundane realism makes it more impactful. Evil Dead Rise is a horror film with a good emotional core, and that will always win my praise. I've said in videos recently, I should start scoring things. I haven't actively done it this time, but I would give this a solid 7. There's bits I didn't like and bits that could have been better. Like I say, the Marauder didn't really win me over. It was interesting, and like I say, the suffering to get there, but otherwise no. But yeah, a 7 out of 10. I think that's fine. And I really can't wait to see more. I want to see what happens next. Are we going to have the world taken over by Deadites? They never actually used that term in this film. Although, have they ever used the term previously? I don't know. Is that someone tell me in the comments, is that like a fan term or is that an official term? I can't recall if it's ever been in a film. But either way, that's not what we're here for. So yeah, Evil Dead Rise, horror film with heart. Absolutely brilliant. That might be the title of this video, who knows. But thank you very much for letting me talk about this. I hope you go and watch it and enjoy it and support everything down the line. But until next time, as always, take care.
I will be dead by dawn.